Okay, so it's 1 past 10. I will slowly start with introducing today's subject, ourselves, because we are doing this webinar for the first time as the presenters for you. So hopefully we won't find any technical issues as well, but it happens for IT, of course, as usual. So today's subject is from the technological threats to strategic strengths, maintaining the data quality and security while transforming traditional workflows with AI. So it will be really high-level topic. We won't go into any technical details, but we would like really to highlight some important things, how AI should be used in the organizations. Let me introduce myself. I'm Wojciech Nowicki. I'm a CTO at IamIP. And here with me today is Bartosz Lesner, our product owner.
Hello.
And now I will step into the presentation. So AI has delivered us enormous power. It's probably the biggest breakthrough in our lifetime. But the same decade, AI also caused some of the biggest failures that we had in the news. And this is what we call the AI paradox. And I wouldn't be me if I wouldn't quote here something important. So with great powers comes great responsibility, and some of us knows it's obviously Spider-Man. So from AlphaFold solving the decade-old scientific challenges through the Netflix recommendations that are keeping us entertained on a daily basis, to the LLMs like ChatGPT or Google Gemini that change completely our daily life, how we work. To the failures, so for example, biased hiring systems, faulty predictive models, and automation disasters that cost hundreds of millions. I will be showing that soon. The challenge for organizations isn't whether to use AI, because we already do it. The real challenge is how to use it safely, especially when dealing with sensitive IP data, which I think most of us do. Sorry. Yeah, that is the slide. So we identified 4 failure zones when working with AI. So let's start with the top one, the data leakage. When we send something to external AI tools, that is the time when we lose control over our data. We don't have a control over where it's stored, what is learning on our data, or what is getting learned on our data, about the retention of that data, etc. All we can do is really we can rely on the contracts with vendors. As an example here, one of the Fortune 100 company finds out that the internal product roadmap had been posted into the public chatbot during some copywriting task, and there was no malicious intent. That was just a lack of guardrails. Yeah. The second thing here is shadow AI. Some of you may know the shadow IT, yeah, but this is the newer version of the threat. It's far more unpredictable. It's simple. People reach for the most convenient tool, not the safest one. You can have the strongest security policies in the world, but if your team rely on the unauthorized plugin, browsers extensions, or personal AI accounts, you've already lost control of your data. As an example here, an European bank found more than 30 unapproved AI tools used daily by the analysis because the official solution felt too slow. That created invisible surface attack. The third thing, the model bias, which I mentioned already on the previous slide as well. So the AI systems, they don't understand the truth. They understand pattern. So based on the training data you put in, if it's biased, incomplete, inconsistent, the model will simply amplify those weaknesses. This is how Amazon hiring model started to discriminate against women. It learned on a bias that was hidden in the historical data, and then it scaled it up. In the IP world, poor data quality leads to wrong classifications, missed patents, and unreliable analysis. So the last one, the final, the thread that nobody likes to talk about, it's the infrastructure. So building on cloud platforms, building on AI, which requires bigger, higher computing power, we are more rely on the providers. So, for example, the AWS blackout in 2025, it's a perfect example. When the regional failure cascaded across dependent services, probably some of us remember that in November, I think it was early November, the half of the internet was down. And that wasn't, the direct effect. Yeah, that was indirect effect on those dependent services. Yeah, Bartosz?
Okay, so this slide shows a simplified data processing workflow. Wojciech already mentioned about failure zones, but let's dive a bit deeper into potential risks and threats. And unfortunately, as you can see, we are facing risk and threats basically at every step of the way. But let's start from collection. So poor data quality. That, in my opinion, is the greatest threat, because data is the foundation of our system. If our inputs are flawed, then the outputs will be flawed. That's a guarantee. Compliance risk, I think, in recent years, the most famous case of compliance risk is the lawsuit that is between New York Times and OpenAI. New York Times claims that OpenAI used millions of articles to train their data. And from the last articles about this, the lawsuit is going into New York Times way. Let's move to pre-processing. The privacy violation. When we are preparing the data, it's really easy to slip personal data into training data sets. And if we misclassify, mislabel, or miss important cases, then the pre-processing results in poor data quality. So we are back to square one. Model bias was already mentioned, as Wojciech said. This is systematically flawed data set that leads to unfair results. In case of overfitting and underfitting, those are pretty interesting because we are able to overtrain our model. So in this case, model knows all the patterns, but it's not able to generalize based on them in the real life. So simplifying it, it knows all the dots, but it's not able to connect them. And on the other hand, underfitting is, of course, when the model is trained poorly, so it's not able to see any significant patterns. Data leakage, that was already mentioned, but there was also a case in OpenAI when other users were able to see what the titles of the chat was, or also some billing information of other users of ChatGPT. So we need to protect the data from leakage. And in case of results, it's really important. When we are talking about AI systems with misinterpretation, it's not only about not understanding the results. It's also about treating them as facts and not remembering that it's probability. Lack of iterative validation. I think one of the most famous cases here was the chatbot made by Microsoft that was called Thai. This was a chat that was easily manipulated by the users, and it shortly started to produce really toxic results, and the project was shut down by Microsoft. Ignoring feedback also leads to poor performance, but if we are not listening to the users, and we are making the mistakes one after another all over again, then we are losing trust. Yeah, we can move to the next one. When we know the threats, when we know the risks, we are able to create, to design a reliable, robust system. But we also need to take into account the pillars, the 4 pillars that we will talk about shortly. And if we do that, then we are able to create a system, an AI system that is really trustworthy. So let's start from reliability. Of course, we need to validate and clean data. That's a must for a good quality. Having a trustworthy source really helps with that because we know where it came from, are we authorized to use it, how it was processed, is it accurate, and does it fit to our goal? And having that, we have a foundation to have reliable outcomes. And with systems now, we have AI that is driving cars. We have AI that is rejecting or accepting loan application. We need to have reliable outcomes in those cases. Let's move to security. We can have like top-notch model that produces incredible, accurate, and good results. But if our system is not acting well under stress and our application is not usable, then the model basically it's useless. So we need to have operational resilience. Protection from breaches, of course. If we have results that are really important and gives us deep insight, we need to protect ourselves from outside threats. And privacy protection. As I mentioned before, we can slip personal data into data training. And then we are exposing individuals. But there are techniques like differential privacy that adds noise to the data. And then it keeps the pattern. It allows AI to learn, but we are not able to track it back to individuals. With explainability. Some time ago, we were pretty content with AI as a black box. But as I said, we have systems that are making really important, sometimes life-changing decisions. So we cannot treat it as a black box anymore. The decision-making process needs to be clear and the results needs to be understandable. And finally, human oversight. I think that at the start, it's good to mention a case that happened in 2020s. We had a face recognition system that misidentified a person, and that led to arrest. So we need to have people that are monitoring the outcomes. We need to have people to identify errors, especially the new ones, because AI won't be able to catch it. And if we want our system to improve, if we want our system to adapt to new circumstances, new patterns, then we also need human at help. We can switch to the other one. Here we have a more practical approach, a short list of do's and don'ts, basically based on our experience, what needs to be done when the AI is implemented. Starting with do's, classification and validation of data. That's basically, I think, a mantra of our webinar because it leads to good quality of our data. In case of security protocols, we need to introduce encryption. We need to have strict access level controls, and we need to have secure infrastructure. If we are doing regular audits, we will be able not only to catch and update our security protocols, but also catch really soon the drift of the model when the performance is lowering, but it won't affect the accuracy as much. And a good system is prepared for failure, and that's when the redundancies and backup coming into place. And of course, we need to stay informed on regulation because it's possible that we will create a system that in time we won't be able to use it because the laws will change. Moving to don'ts, if we will ignore the data lineage, we are losing control of our greatest asset because we, again, don't know where it came from, if we have rights to use it, and what's the quality of it. When we are thinking about threats, most of the time we are thinking about outsider threats in case of IT hackers. But designing the system, we need to take into account that insiders, by mistake or maybe on purpose, can do the same damage as the outsiders. And if we have the system in place, the user training is needed because our users need to know exactly how to use the features and what they can expect from it to being able to achieve the goals that they can with the system. The monitoring and complacency, I think that is pretty simple. If we are not monitoring the outcomes, we are guaranteed that the results will go down. And ethical considerations are no longer nice to have because, as Wojciech mentioned, the bias, unfair results, unfair decisions are leading to losing trust and damage reputation. Yep, and let's move to the other one. And this slide, based on the same workflow, shows, in our opinion, an AI solution that was made right. This is a flow of AI categorizer, a feature that was implemented by IamIP, and it categorizes new hits in monitorings to the relevant and non-relevant, also giving us the confidence of the score. When we are looking at the flow, it's really important to mention that through the whole flow, the data is being backed up. Also, really strict access control is in place, both on the user side and on the developer and maintenance side. So no one unauthorized hasn't access to data. And of course, in case of like really big disaster, we have a second infrastructure in place. So we can assure that the operations can continue. When we are move to data collection, we are gathering the data from credible sources, both the core data and the translation, if the full text are missing, that's coming from the credible source. On pre-processing, the process is pretty simple. We are just dividing the data set into the relevant and irrelevant buckets. In case of large data sets, that can be a bit tedious, but it's really hard to make a mistake. So we cannot transform it into a wrong data set. And of course, the results are encrypted. When we move to the model, every operation that are connected to our models is run in our own infrastructure, so that ensures security. The model that we are using is created for that particular purpose. And as I mentioned before, we are using handpicked data to train. The results are encrypted. The protocols that we are using to communicate between systems are secure. And yeah, basically the results are easy to use, easy to read because we have the relevant and not relevant with the confidence. So I think it's really hard to misinterpret, but still it's easy to catch anything that is out of ordinary. And if that's the case, and if the performance of our model is going down, then the case is analyzed and a new model is trained based on refined data. Thank you.
Sorry, my microphone was muted. So thank you very much, Bartosz. So as we can see, the data is the biggest risk and it is the biggest asset at the same time. So what we identified is that there is a recommended approach for that, and then there is this implementation spectrum. So you can go with public tools. They are easy, they are really fast to implement, they are incredibly accessible, they are great for the experimentation, but they are as well the place where the most of the data leakage happens. You don't have any transparency how your data is stored, reused, or trained. And for industries which are handling sensitive information like IP, legal, pharma, finance, we think this is non-started for production use. Of course, you can still experiment, you can have some MVPs, etc., but we wouldn't recommend to use that in a production environment. Then it comes the hybrid approach, which is becoming, I think, the norm nowadays. So you still use those powerful external models, but you should wrap them inside the secure interfaces or on-prem computations or controlled over APIs. So you need to make sure that your sensitive data never touches the public environments, but you still have the benefits of those state-of-art capabilities that are coming from cloud. Of course, this requires some skills from your team to implement it, or more skills. Yeah, the public tools as well require some skills. You got medium time to market, you got medium control, and you have a balanced risk. The final group are the purpose-built internal systems. This is really the strategic path that you can choose for all the mission critical work, especially in IP. The best approach is to purpose-built internal AI systems. That gives you full control over where data lives, the full transparency into how models behave, predictable performance and governance, and you get compliance out of the box. But the most important thing is that you build AI systems that are aligned with your domain, your workflows, and your risk, not the other way around. So some key takeaways from today's presentation. As you can see, the trust, compliance, and differentiation, that is something that you should really focus from the business side. But those 3 points that you can see here, security used to be seen as the cost or a barrier for innovation. We think that mindset has completely flipped. Today, organizations that treat data security as a strategic asset gain stronger customer trust, fewer disruptions, and a huge advantage in highly regulated domains like IP. When your clients know their data is safe with you, that becomes part of your brand, basically. So the second point, as you saw, the most failures trace back to low quality or ungoverned data. If the data is clean, structured, and trusted, the AI will be too. This is why the data governance isn't an optional, it's a foundational thing for you. Just remember, quality in, trust out every time. The third point, so in the world where the outages, blackouts, and model errors will happen, the resilience is the real measure of the leadership in your area. The organizations that prepare for failure with backups, redundancy, and secure internal workflows are the ones to stay online, keep delivering, and keep innovating even in turbulence. So these 3 truths guide everything: secure the data, raise the quality, and engineer for resilience. And AI will become your strategic advantage, not your strategic risk. So that's it. Thank you very much. Now I think we have still 5 minutes for the questions. Okay, I don't see any questions, and I see that people are already slowly leaving. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending our webinar just before Christmas. It might be difficult to find time, but thank you once again, and hopefully see you.
Thank you. Have a nice holiday. Bye bye.